Allora, per chi verrà a vedermi oggi giocare a MAGESEEKER, alle ore 18, lo ripeto, ora ci guardiamo. Dov'è il signor Necrit? Necrit. All the story you should know before playing the MAGESEEKER. Questo video di 20 minuti che ci spiega tutta la lore, tutto quanto. Del nostro amico Necrit, che ormai è un... come dire, una figura ricorrente nella nostra ricerca della conoscenza e della lore del gioco. Io mi metto più in basso, così non do fastidio. Sottotitoli attivati e godiamoci questa introduzione al gioco di oggi.
The time is upon us, and the MageSeeker is only a day from release.
Oggi!
Now, every video titled All You Need to Know should be based around one fact. Without this video, you would be lost. Which is why the first thing I need to tell you is, without this video, you're gonna be fine. Even though the lore of League's universe is absolutely massive, Riot Games always deliver their stories in a way where it doesn't really matter which story you consume first. You can get into the comics and have no idea what's happening. You can watch Arcane and also have no idea what's happening. You can play the game and never learn about any of the lore. And as far as we know, the MageSeeker should follow the exact same rules. At the beginning of every League story, you always learn the base info you need.
In poche parole, non c'è bisogno di tutto sto video perché tanto ci sarà il trailer, il prologo che spiega tutto. Ma noi ce lo vediamo lo stesso perché ci piace essere informati.
For the story. After that, you are just taken on an adventure. However, that doesn't mean that having more context doesn't enhance the experience.
Questi qua sono i MageSeeker. Il gioco prende il nome da loro. Da questa pietruzza qua che si chiama proprio MageSeeker.
So today we're gonna talk about all the stories that should enhance your experience with the MageSeeker storyline. However, I have to point out that there will be absolutely no spoilers. Even though I had the opportunity, I purposefully told Riot I don't wanna play the game ahead of time. Because 1, I'm gonna be streaming it tomorrow, and first impressions are always fun content.
Stessa cosa che ho detto a Riot anch'io. Ho detto grazie mille del codice, vi amo, vi adoro, vi sbaciucchierei, ma me lo voglio giocare in live, quindi non voglio spoiler. Tra l'altro, ti aspetto in live oggi alle 18, che lo giochiamo.
But also, without playing the game, there is no way I can accidentally spoil anything. I truly have no idea where the story is going to take us. So overall, I'm going to summarize every story of every character that should appear in this game. But because, as I mentioned, the lore of League's universe is massive, I will leave out some
Xinzao non esce mai da nessuna parte,
at the same time, I will mention other things which are likely to get referenced, even if it is just a quick side character. Also, one more thing to mention, if you don't want me to explain everything and if you want to experience the story yourselves, there is a quick and easy way to do it. And no, I am not talking about watching my other videos. Honestly, all you need to do is to read the Lux comic and the Katarina comic. The Katarina comic was purposefully released as a prequel to the MageSeeker game, but the Lux comic is a proper setup for Lux and Silas and Garen and anyone else who might appear here.
Questo fumetto qua che trovate sul sito di League, sono 5, ti spiega tutto quello che è successo. Cioè il motivo per cui Sala si sta ribellando, il motivo per cui Demacia è mezza distrutta, eccetera, eccetera.
So if you just want some quick lore, the comics are the easiest way. But now, with all of this said, let's have a look at all the stories you should know before playing the MageSeeker. Even though the main character of this game is Silas, we should absolutely start by talking about Morgana, who is going to be a big part of this game. Which means, before we start explaining the lore of Demacia, we need to talk about Targon.
Ah già, giusto, perché essendo che hai l'aspetto della giustizia, Morgana è letteralmente il contrario, quindi immagino che se Garen e compagnia... Se Garen e compagnia lodano Morgana, immagino che Silas farà il contrario, no?
Targon is a giant mountain created by celestial gods that also serves as a link to the celestial realms. Now, once upon a time, for reasons that are still unknown to us, there were small runes that were scattered across Runeterra. As it turns out, these were the world runes, which held the power to create worlds. And apparently they were scattered across Runeterra because of some celestial who just wanted to be mischievous.
Quelle che Ryze cerca come un matto per tutta Runeterra per confinarle in modo che nessuno abusi del loro enorme potere, e quelle che noi usiamo in gioco. Questa qua è la runa della dominazione, quella rossa. E anzi, mi sa che questa qua è proprio l'Electrocute. Fa ridere, eh?
Anyway, the point is, after humans on Runeterra started discovering...
Ma è Medivh questo. Ma questo è Medivh. Questo qua. Ma è uguale. In realtà, credo che lui sia Ryze o... allora, le cose sono due. O lui è Brand e lui è Ryze, o lui è Ryze e questo è il suo maestro. Una delle due cose. Ma questo qui è letteralmente la fotocopia sputata di Medivh, che se non sapete chi è un importantissimo personaggio di World of Warcraft.
These world runes, they realized they hold incredible powers and they started using them as magical nukes. And because humans are humans and everyone wants to rule the world, everyone used the world runes to conquer the world. This started what is known as the Rune Wars, a massive war that absolutely devastated most of the world.
Quello di cui parlava Heimerdinger in Arcane, se vi ricordate, che Heimerdinger era spaventatissimo dalla magia, proprio perché lui ha assistito alla guerra delle rune e a cosa è capace di fare la magia. Ed è la stessa cosa per cui Demacia è così razzista verso di loro, perché appunto hanno visto coi loro occhi che cosa può fare.
Now, as the Rune Wars raged, there were two Targonians who ascended Mount Targon in an attempt to escape the wars. And as they finally reached the peak, Mira, who was expecting 2 children, was chosen to be the aspect of justice. And after that, she gave birth to Kael and Morgana. Sounds fine, right? Well, fun fact. Well, after Mira became an aspect, she was turned into this.
Che cazzo è un angelo?
Let that sink in for a moment. Now, as Mira traveled around the world trying to fight all evil and maybe quell the Rune Wars a little bit, her husband realized maybe this is not the best way to raise 2 kids.
Nessuno può fuggire dalla propria
Bella
ombra.
vecchi, grazie 3 mesi caro, bentornato. Madonna quanto sono belle le artwork, cazzo. Quanto sono belle le artwork. Oh, madonna, io voglio l'MMORG, non ne posso più. Voglio l'MMORG.
Quite dangerous, and so he had a great idea. During this entire apocalypse, there was a place on Runeterra which became known as Demacia. It was a kingdom built inside the Petricite Forest.
Tra l'altro, credo, non ne sono sicuro, non vorrei dire una cazzata, ma credo che i fiumi qui siano così ramificati, quasi che sembrano spaccati, proprio perché la guerra delle rune ha letteralmente terraformato il territorio, cioè il paesaggio. Ora non vorrei dire una stronzata, però così a vederlo mi sembra così. Ma va che bella!
The Petricite Forests. Now, Petricite is a special material that has the ability to absorb magic, which means that if someone holding
Assorbire, non annullare. Questo è molto importante.
Powerful magic gets near it, they won't be able to use their magic because it will be absorbed by the forest. So naturally, Demacia became an excellent place where people could hide from magic. And after they combined the wood with the lime, they created petricite stones, and they used this to build the entire kingdom.
Exactly.
So yes, the vast majority of all the pale buildings in Demacia have the ability to absorb magic. So on one faithful night, as Mira was attending her celestial duties, her husband took her 2 daughters and fled into the lands of Demacia, where they quickly learned that as all the people fled here from the magic, they were all united with hatred towards crime and magic. And while Kael understood the importance of laws in this region, because all of them were trying to escape the war crimes. Morgana felt sympathetic towards all the mages who were cast out. And in the end, unfortunately for their father, who was trying to protect them from celestial powers, eventually their mother tracked them down, and 2 celestial blades fell from the sky in front of them. This is how Kael and Morgana became the Winged Protectors. 2 godly beings who essentially ruled Demacia. Even though they still had their own king and stuff, but that's not important right now. After this, as Kael's ideology became more and more extreme, where everyone had to strictly obey the law, Morgana found herself pleading for the cases of those who wanted to atone for their sins. And one day, these 2 perspectives clashed. One of Kael's most renowned champions, called Ronas, came to arrest Morgana herself, because apparently she was aiding the criminals. And to protect her followers, as a response, Kael killed him by shackling him in shadowy flames. Of course, Kael wasn't too happy about this, and in rage they swore to bring Ronas's killer to justice. And so, Kael and Morgana fought in the sky. But as they fought, Kael rained down holy blades from the sky upon the city of Demacia, which aimed to smite down all the sinners. But this also included their father, whose sin was taking them away from their mother. After their father's death, Morgana threw her mother's blade at Kael, and she even tried to rip off her own wings because they reminded her of her pain. But no blade was sharp enough to cut them off. So instead, she bound her own wings in iron chains, resolving instead to walk the realms of mortals. In the end, Kael flew back into the celestial realms, where she wanted to fully attend to her duties besides her mother, while Morgana stayed down on the surface of Runeterra, where over the same to her duties besides her mother.
Quanto cazzo è thick, Kyle? Non l'avevo mai vista così. Ma che cosciotti.
While Morgana stayed down on the surface of Runeterra, where over the centuries she became all but forgotten. And these days, the reason why Demacia has all those angelic statues all around is because they only remembered the deeds of Kael, who became remembered as the Winged Protector, while Morgana's dark outbursts became the legends of the Veiled One. The story ends by mentioning that Morgana stayed in the shadows of the kingdom, waiting for the day Kael would come back to Runeterra. Because should that happen, she would come back to bring all the sinners to justice again, and Morgana will be ready to stop her. Of course, by now you might have realized that the story of Kael and Morgana is a direct parallel to how Demacia is dealing with the mages. For the longest time, even without Kael and Morgana being in their kingdom, Demacians still followed what is referred to as the Laws of Stone, which essentially tell you, you can't use magic in Demacia. We remember what magic did during the Rune Wars, and to enforce these rules, Demacia founded the Order of the Mageseekers, who hunt down anyone who is thought to be a mage. And after they capture them, they bring them into the prisons where they torture them as they try to cleanse their magic. Usually this means that they force them into drinking petricite, which is very painful. And this is where the story of Silas comes in. Silas was a kid from Dragborn, who also just happened to be a mage. However, he had a very special ability. He could see magic. Eventually, when the Mageseekers captured him and they brought him into the prisons, they found out that he had this ability. And they realized seeing mages could be very helpful with capturing mages.
Poche parole l'hanno usato come radar.
The irony, Silas became a Mageseeker, where he was really just used as a tool. And even though at first sight this may seem very sketchy to you, don't worry, the Mageseekers do it all the time. Yes, no magic is allowed in Demacia, but the Mageseekers can use it because they are the good guys. Anyway, on one fateful mission, when Silas and his two patrons, who were really his prison guards, were looking for a mage who turned out to be a little child, Silas...
Voi non potete, la magia è cattiva e noi la usiamo perché siamo i buoni e dobbiamo usarla per eliminare la cattiveria, ok? Abbiamo ragione noi. Oh. Voi non potete, noi sì.
Found the kid in an old shed, and in an attempt to help them, he tried to hide them, which means that he touched them, and when he touched them, he realized he has a second ability. Silas can also use the magic of any mage he touches.
Broken.
So after he touched the kid, he exploded with magic and killed everyone.
Broken.
After that, he was taken into the prison and he was no longer used as a tool for the Mageseekers. And he stayed in this prison for a very long time.
Direi.
Actually, he stayed there until he met Lux. So, let's talk about her. Lux is a crown guard, which means she comes from the royal family.
Quanto è bella.
And unfortunately, she also happens to be a mage. Of course, because she's from the royal family, everyone is trying to hide the
Potentissima, tra l'altro. L'elemento luce mi sa che nella magia è uno dei più forti. Guardate Kizaru di One Piece. Vabbè, Lux non può smolecolizzare. Oddio, non lo so.
fact that she's a mage.
Vabbè, poi è molto forte.
Garen knew his entire life, but he always looked away and he pretended he didn't know. But yes, they couldn't hide the fact that Lux was a mage. For many years, things were fine. Lux successfully hid her truth. She even joined the Illuminators, which were special people who like to help people. They were like the Demacian charity. But eventually, as she was exploring the main castle...
Madonna, guarda quanto cazzo è bella Demacia! Guardala che bella che è! Io voglio esplorarla. Me lo date il gioco, per favore. Basta che sennò piango tutto il tempo.
She stumbled upon the Mageseeker library, where the Mageseekers were hiding all the books about magic, which she was interested in because as she was growing up, she learned that she couldn't control her own magic. So she had to find a way how to learn to master it. And after that, she stumbled upon the wardens down in the prisons, where Lux found all the mage prisoners. And one of them was Silas. When the two first met, Lux was afraid of him because...
Con degli addominali della Madonna e un fisico super scolpito, Nanco Galio. Immagino che in tutti gli anni di prigionia abbia fatto solamente flessioni.
Well, Silas was a criminal. But she then learned that not only did Silas know that she was a mage because he could see magic, which definitely freaked her out, but he also became someone who helped her control her own magic. And so, throughout the next weeks, Lux decided to visit Silas in the prisons every now and then. She brought him some of the books from the Mageseeker library because Silas was a nice guy and he just wanted to read something. What she didn't realize is that she brought him very special documents, which made Silas realize that Petricite not only dampened magic, but it absorbed it. So anything that Petricite touches, if Silas touches it after that, Silas can use the magic, which made him realize his chains can now be his weapons. And this is pretty much where the main story of the Lux comic happens. After Garen and Diana Crownguard, who is their aunt, learn that Lux is secretly meeting Silas in the prisons, they decide to get rid of the source of the corruption and execute Silas. Obviously, Lux doesn't agree with that and, well, Silas ends up on the chopping block. In an attempt to stop her from doing something stupid, they lock Lux in a room, and she uses her magic to break out, which makes everyone realize Lux is a mage. Next, after successfully getting to Silas, she hugs him, which gave Silas the power to use her light. And so, Silas broke free. And this is where the Mageseeker game should start. After Silas breaks free, all the other mages who are also hiding in Demacia realize now is the time to fight back. And so, the mage civil war begins in Demacia, as chaos erupts all around the city. Throughout all of this, Silas gets to fight Garen, he also gets to fight Jarvan. They also fight in the royal quarters, where Silas just touches the ground and he taps into the power of Morgana. Because remember, Petricite can absorb magic, and so Morgana's magic is still deep within Demacia. And after he beats pretty much everyone, he takes Jarvan, he takes him in as a prisoner, you know, a little bit of a revenge for Silas being prisoner for many years. And they walk to the chambers of his father, King Jarvan III. And they realize the king died. Now, because all of this happened in all the chaos, everyone thinks that the king was killed by a mage.
E invece no.
But from the recent Katarina comic, we learned that was a lie. The king actually died by Noxian hands. And all the rebelling mages had nothing to do with
For
it,
Noxus.
which only sparked up more conflict, and now everyone hates mages even more. Anyway, with the king dead and with the city being in chaos,
Insomma, Catarina è una puttana, come sempre.
Silas escapes, and I'm pretty sure this is actually where the MageSeeker game begins. It begins right after Silas breaks out of the chains. Lux also escapes the city because, well, now they know that she's a mage, so she just escaped through the sewers. Down in the sewers, she met Garen, and Garen finally witnessed her use magic, so now he knows that she's a mage. But they are a family, and he knows that she's good, so he hugs her, and they are all good. Which is where the story kinda cuts off, and it is all a setup for the game. So Lux can't hide the truth anymore. Garen learned that his sister is a mage, but he is still attending to his duties. So he still has to follow the laws of Stone,
Quanto è
and
bella
he
Lux.
still has to fight mages.
Quanto è
Even
bella
though
Lux.
he knows not
C'è una ragazza che ho su Instagram che è identica. Me la sposerei subito, tipo.
all mages are that bad. In all the story, Katarina came in, killed the king, and escaped Demacia, so I'm not sure if we'll actually see her in the game. Maybe we will see her just as she is escaping the city. And there is also Jarvan IV, the one who got beat by Silas and whose father was killed. Which means he's gonna be very, very furious. Also, ironically, Jarvan IV is in love with Shyvana.
Yeah.
At least it is heavily implied. And Shyvana is half a magical being. So yes, all of Demacia is corrupted and everything is just one massive irony. But this is where we can mention some really cool other things that may get referenced in this game. First of all, you know when I mentioned that Diana Crownguard is the aunt of Lux and Garen? Well, Diana was also forced into marrying Lord Eldred, who is the leader of the Mageseekers. We always suspected that the marriage between Eldred and Diana was there just to protect the Crownguard family. But yes, this kinda gives meaning to keep your enemies closer. Also, I really wouldn't be surprised if Lord Eldred appeared in this game. He is, after all, the main bad guy when it comes to the Mageseekers. Also, there are some other big characters who may or may not appear in the game. Xin Zhao was the main royal guard of King
Xin
Jarvan
Zhao?
III. He was asked to deliver a message just as he was being assassinated, so he wasn't there. And in the past, he actually swore to kill himself should anything happen to the king. Well, this is awkward. So he could be referenced in the game, but we are not sure. There is also Fiora, a really strong swordsman who isn't really all about fighting mages, so I'm fine if she's left out. But there is also Sona. Sona is a mage who was adopted into Demacia from Ionia. Her story is amazing. The Bavel family, who are core part of Demacia, know about all the mages. They adopted a bunch of orphans from Ionia after that entire mess happened. And after they learned that some of them were mages, they were just happy that they could keep them safe. But yes, unfortunately, in the end, people found out that even Sona was a mage, and so Sona fled away. Which means, somewhere outside of the forests, we might see Sona as well. Of course, we know that Shyvana will also be part of the game. Long story short, Shyvana was born from a draconic egg after it absorbed human essence. It was kinda smuggled all around Runeterra until she hatched, and then she started escaping her mother, because the brood mother thought that she was an abomination. Eventually, her mother found her in Demacia, where Jarvan helped her kill her mother. So if Yiva, the great dragon, gets mentioned, that was Shyvana's mother. And lastly, it would be cool if we also got to see Galio. Galio is a massive petricite construct
Penso
that
che
was
si vedrà per
actually
forza,
built
Galio.
to fight Noxians. Demacians would always just drag him into battles just to stand there and absorb magic. What they didn't know is that Galio was created by Durand, a really clever person who is dead now, but who figured out a way to give petricite constructs a soul. So after they absorb magic, they come alive. So every time he appeared on the battlefields, Galio just came alive and killed everyone, and then everyone mysteriously forgot. Because I guess Demacians were just happy they survived. Regardless, Galio now stands in the capital city of Demacia, and every now and then he gets woken up by Lux.
Avete visto quanto cazzo è grosso Galio, ragazzi? Cioè, sarà alto almeno 50 metri. È letteralmente un titano di Attack on Titan, è enorme. Cioè, guarda i noxiani quanto sono minuscoli in confronto. È gigante, Gali. È gigante ed è super buffato. Tipo. No, Malphite è più grande, mi sa.
Because Lux's magic is so powerful, she can wake him up just by proximity. But unfortunately, I don't know if we'll see him in the game, because Galio's storyline doesn't really fit into this entire Mage Rebellion. Even though, with all the magic erupting all around Demacia, Galio should be absolutely awake all the time. But that's really all the Demacian lore you should know about before playing the MageSeeker game. Honestly, this is definitely one of the coolest regions that Runeterra has. Even though, to be fair, every region has a really cool storyline. This one just happens to be including a lot of different champions and a lot of irony. But don't be fooled, there is way more in Demacia than just mages. In the forests, I hope we get to see some of the magical beasts. For example, we now learned that there is a giant slug. Demacia still has some dragons, so maybe we'll...
Tra l'altro Fiddlesticks è nei dintorni di Demacia che si mangia i soldati, tra l'altro.
see those.
E c'è anche Ekarim.
But also, I kinda hope that we get to see some demons. Nocturne has haunted a piece of Demacia for quite some time.
Ah, pure Nocturne.
And also, we know that Fiddlesticks
infatti.
is around. That would be a really cool enemy, right? But I'm pretty sure the rating of the game would go up if they included him.
Sarebbe figo se oggi mentre gioco magari ti trovi in in un bosco e senti lo stridio di Fiddlesticks. Guarda, mi cagherei addosso. Spero che l'abbiano messo come easter egg. Allora, amici, vi ripeto. Allora, oggi io inizio a streamare alle 4. Ok, più o meno alle 4 del pomeriggio. Faccio qualche game di LOL. Vabbè, 4 e mezza, non lo so, comunque. Alle 18 mi trovate a giocare questo gioco qua.